Are there any questions without notice? I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah. My question is to the Prime Minister. Under Labor, Australia is the only advanced economy where living standards have gone backwards. The US, UK, Germany, Canada, France, Denmark have all seen rising living standards, whilst ours have reversed. After 4 years of Australians going backwards, when will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him?
I'm the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. And Dennis Shanahan picked it, broadcast it this morning. He told us that the Liberals had decided that Wednesday was going to be Economy Day. So they've gone 2 days without asking a single question on the economy or cost of living. We've had the clown who's the Shadow Treasurer singing at the dispatch box, which is a human rights issue for all those who had to listen to it.
Order. But
they're out there. The Deputy Leader was out there. Deputy Leader in this House, not in the other House, because in the other House the Deputy Leader isn't even on their Tactics Committee. Not in the leadership group, but she's the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, Mr Speaker. But the member for Canning, tried to resist the Shanahan push this morning, Mr Speaker. He said just because commentators like Dennis Shanahan don't like our question time strategy doesn't mean it's wrong.
Order. Members on my left and right, we are going to bring the House to order. There is far too much noise and interjection. This is question number 1. So we're going to take the temperature down, and the Manager of Opposition is now going to take his point of order and show him the respect he deserves.
Thanks, Speaker, and it goes to direct relevance. This is question time, not quotation time.
Resume your seat. Order. The Deputy Leader of the House of the Opposition of the House of Representatives is not helping. Order. The Prime Minister will return to the question.
Mr Speaker, they always talk Australia down. Australia, which has faster economic growth than Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK or the United States. The UK and Germany have recently experienced recessions, Mr Speaker. Australia has a lower unemployment rate than Canada, France, Italy, the UK and the United States. We have stronger employment growth than Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United States. Higher participation rates than Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United States and the UK.
Member for O'Connor.
And unlike G7 nations, Australia's budget has been in surplus in recent years, along with the smallest gross debt. That's our record. They stand here. I got asked a question about international comparisons. Of the economy. And those opposite, when it comes to living standards, I'll tell you what will benefit living standards, the tax cut we're going to deliver on July 1. The one that was opposed by those opposite. The other thing that might just help us, the 1.2 million jobs that we have created on our watch since we came to office. The best employment record of any advanced economy in the world. That is what we are dealing with. We know there are global challenges behind the economy, but what we're doing is continuing to work each and every day in the interests of Australians.
Before we go any further, the member for Forrest, the Leader of the Nationals, interjected 7 and 8 times respectively during that one answer. So I'm going to request their assistance with the House to not interject anymore, otherwise they won't be here for any more questions. Give the call to the member for Menzies.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese government working to support and advise Australian nationals impacted by the recent conflict in the Middle East?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Menzies for his question and for his representation of the interests of many of his constituents who have relatives, of course, who are impacted by the events that we're seeing in the Middle East. I can confirm right now there are over 200 Australians in the air on flight EK414 from Dubai, making their way to Sydney, and this is a good news after the disruption that has occurred. I spoke last night with my friend, His Highness Sheikh MBZ Mohammed bin Zayed, the President of the United Arab Emirates. On that call, I conveyed Australia's support and solidarity for the UAE and other regional partners amid the escalation in the Middle East conflict. Countries that have not been a party to any attacks on Iran, but who have been subjected to the random attacks that Iran is subjecting people right across the Gulf to. I reiterated Australia's clear position that there is no justification for Iran's attacks on civilian areas in Abu Dhabi, Dubai and other areas of the UAE and of the Gulf states. We have called for Iran to cease these indiscriminate attacks immediately. And I did have the opportunity to thank His Highness for the generous support that the UAE is providing to Australians who have had their plans disrupted due to the conflict, including providing accommodation and food. We understand this is a very distressing and challenging time for Australians who have been caught up in these events. Many of them, of course, would have been on transit through those routes that are so familiar to Australians and have found themselves in a conflict zone. Their loved ones here in Australia, of course, continue to be disturbed by what they see on the TV every night. The safety of Australians in the region is our government's first priority, and we'll continue to do all that we can to provide Australians with information and support. I was able to discuss with His Highness the importance of the resumption of these commercial flights when it's safe to do so. There's around 115,000 Australians in the region, Mr Speaker. The resumption of commercial flights continues to be the best avenue to ensure the safe and quickest way for Australians to return. Australian passengers facing flight delays or other issues should check with both their insurer and the airline about their options for cancelled flights, and of course DFAT are playing a role as well in keeping people informed. It has activated its crisis centre, which is providing consular support to Australians in the region, and we're also deploying further resources to the region to assist. Mr Speaker, our thoughts are with all those caught up in this conflict. We continue to engage, and I've had personal conversations, as I'm sure many others in this chamber have, with people who are visiting the region and are concerned. We say continue to listen to advice, stay safe, and we want to see every Australian be able to come home safely.
To support the Leader of the Opposition on indulgence.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I associate the opposition with the remarks from the Prime Minister a moment ago? It is a frightening time for any Australians who are in the Gulf or the Middle East, and they are seeing this very real conflict in front of them. We agree with the position of the government that the Iranian attacks are unjustified, and our thoughts are with those Australians in the region and, of course, their families back here in Australia. This is a frightening and difficult time for them. We also stand ready and offer any assistance and support we can to the government to ensure that Australians can get back to safety as soon as possible.
Call to the honourable member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, under Labor, Australia is the only advanced economy where living standards have gone backwards. Real wages are now 2.1% lower than 4 years ago, and the Reserve Bank forecasts they will continue to fall this year. After 4 years of Australians going backwards under Labor, When will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for his question on Economy Day. We congratulate him on getting a question on the economy today. And I thank him for not singing the question. I thank him sincerely, Mr. Speaker. He spoke about the economy and how Australia's going and how, according to those opposite who continue to talk Australia down, they must have missed the recession that took place in countries. Just look across the ditch at New Zealand, for example, as well as the UK and other countries as well. They must have missed the fact that 1.2 million jobs have been created. But, of course, the member who asked the question asks about standard of living and the impact on quality of life. Well, they've missed also the fact that paid parental leave will hit the full 6 months in a little while. The Shadow Treasurer described it as a very bad scheme. They must have missed the fact that the Shadow Treasurer has advocated, of course, a flat tax. He said this: we must stop fiddling at the margins. We have to move towards a simpler 20% flat personal company and consumption tax.
Order. The Prime Minister will pause the manager on another point of order.
Goes to direct relevance. Once again, the Prime Minister is quoting rather than answering. This was about falling real wages, and we'd ask you to come back to
The difference from this question is that this was a very, I think everyone can hear, a very broad question that contained quite a lot of moving parts to the question and a political question at the end. So if you're going to ask a political question, and I appreciate sometimes they're not, they're short answers, and this one is in that category. So the Prime Minister is going to go a bit broader, as all Prime Ministers have done. In question time, Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I'm surprised that they suggest that this was a narrow question about wages, because those opposite wanted real wages to fall. That was actually their plan.
Order.
That was actually their plan. And of course, they also have opposed all of the measures that we've taken to assist people. They opposed the fact that since the election in July we cut student debt by 20% for more than 3 million Australians. That helped them to the tune of $5,500 each. In August, we protected penalty rates for weekend and overtime pay. That has something to do with wages. Those opposite opposed it. In September, we increased all the social services payments for 5 million Australians. In October, we expanded our 5% deposit plan for every first home buyer. That have benefited now 225,000 Australians. In November, we tripled the bulk billing incentive for every Australian, boosting bulk billing. In December, we opened 6 more urgent care clinics. In January, we had 1-800 Medicare went live, and we reduced the cost of medicines to just $30, from $30 down to $25. It was $42.50 was what we were left with. That helps people as well.
Order. No, too many interjections during that answer, and the one before, and the member for Cook has been continuing interjecting. He'll leave the chamber under 94A. Just simply can't have people just non-stop interjecting all throughout the week. There's consequences for actions. The yelling, the interjections, it's too much. Order. Members on my right. Now that the House has come to order, we shall hear from the honourable member for Adelaide.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How has the Albanese Labor government acted to strengthen Australia's fuel security? Why has this been so critical after a decade of mismanagement?
Give a call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. And the very concerning events in the Middle East have led Australians, quite rightly, to ask about fuel security and how we're placed, and have led to many questions about Australia's position. And I'm pleased to tell the House and to inform Australians that we enter this period of great international instability very well prepared. In 2023, the Albanese government instituted the minimum stockholding obligation on Australia's refining companies, Mr Speaker. There had been no obligation before that, before 2023, for Australia's refineries to hold minimum stocks. I can tell the House that in Australia currently we hold 1.5 billion litres of petrol and 3 billion litres of diesel in our minimum stock obligation, which is in effect a strategic reserve. And those stocks are held in the electorates of Corio and Bonner, which is where we think they should be held, Mr Speaker, here in Australia, not in Texas or Louisiana. We think the minimum stock obligation, the strategic reserve for our country, should be held in our country. That is the approach of the Albanese Labor government, Mr Speaker, which was a change of policy in 2023 over that which we inherited. And in addition, Mr Speaker, I want to talk to Australia's truckies and to those who rely on Australian trucking and say we know how important AdBlue is for the importance of Australia's trucking industry. And when we came to office, there was no stockpile of urea, and I can tell the House that we now have a stockpile of 5 weeks' worth of urea, 7,500 tonnes, which adds to the 12 weeks held by the private sector, which means we have substantial reserves when it comes to urea, which is necessary for trucking, and for AdBlue, which is a very good thing indeed, Mr Speaker, as well. Because in 2021, Australia's only producer of urea in Gibson Island announced its closure, and that meant we had no domestic sovereign capability. I'm also pleased to tell the House how much the government welcomes. I ask what we're doing about it. I'm pleased to tell the House, Mr Speaker, that we welcome Perdaman's decision to develop a urea manufacturing facility in the Burrup Basin with the support of the North Australia Infrastructure Fund, Mr Speaker, which is now under construction. Sovereign capability in Australia for Australians. We've built a stockpile while we are waiting for that to happen. It's now being built under this government. That's what a future made in Australia looks like, Mr Speaker. That's what sovereign capability looks like. So the Albanese government can't guarantee that there won't be international instability. We can't guarantee that there won't be impacts on prices and there won't be impacts, Mr Speaker, across the energy supply chain. But we can guarantee that we enter this crisis better prepared than ever before, Mr Speaker, with the highest fuel stocks in 15 years, rebuilding sovereign capability on things like urea, and with a country that is prepared for the worst the world can throw at us. That's the Albanese government's approach.
Before I call the member for Mackellar, I'll just do some acknowledgements to welcome people to the Parliament. I see in the gallery today the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk, former Premier of Queensland, Nick Demento, the Mayor of Townsville and members of Townsville Enterprise, alongside Liz Schmidt, the Mayor of Charters Towers, and Perina Delacourt, the Mayor of Burdekin. And it's nice to see Jenny Ware, the former member for Hughes, in the gallery today. And Paul Sadler, the Chair of Meals on Wheels Australia, is accompanied by Tennille Valesi, the Board Director of Meals on Wheels, and Professor Len Notaras, Executive Director of the National Critical Care and Trauma Response Centre based in Darwin, as guest of the member for Solomon. Welcome to you all. Give the call to the member for Mackellar.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The review of public sector board appointments found the current appointments process is not fit for purpose and often looks like patronage and nepotism. The review found, and I quote, "The public's confidence in the integrity of appointments is so low that the clarity and assurance of legislation is required to rebuild trust and embed integrity in the board appointments process." Can the government explain why they ignored this recommendation to legislate an independent appointment process, instead releasing a 7-point non-binding framework?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the honourable member for her question, which I'll answer in my responsibilities representing Senator Gallagher, Minister Gallagher, in this place. We take our responsibilities to appoint the best people we can very seriously. Certainly the appointments that I've made in the Treasury portfolio are appointments that I'm very proud of, and we have reformed the system of appointments to make them more about merit and the national interest. When we came to office, ministers had virtually unchecked power to reward people and fill boards with political favourites. By the end of the previous government, we saw some particularly shameless behaviour in terms of jobs for mates. So this government did commission the Briggs Review, as the honourable member knows, and in response we've instituted whole-of-government reform through the new framework that the honourable member refers to. Now, our framework actually goes further than the Briggs Review itself recommended. We're extending it beyond government boards to cover departmental secretaries, agency heads, statutory office holders across the Commonwealth. Now, the 7 principles of the framework establish that all appointments must be made on merit in the public interest, with ministers fully accountable for each decision that they make. Under the framework, appointments must reflect Australia's diversity, uphold integrity and high standards, and be made through flexible, proportionate processes that are informed by rigorous skills and capability assessments. That's all underpinned by mandatory transparency and reporting requirements, and that transparency is how we make sure ministers and the government is accountable to the Australian people for the quality of the appointments that we make. So we've put in place a new system of appointments that will get the best people into the right roles so that government bodies can deliver for Australians. That means real accountability to Cabinet, to Parliament and to the Australian people, as it should be. We welcome the honourable member's scrutiny on government appointments, but we think that the best model is to have ministers responsible and accountable in this way to the Australian people for the appointments that we make.
Now give the call to the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What steps has the Albanese Labor government taken to prevent price gouging by fuel suppliers following the events in the Middle East? And is the Treasurer aware of any alternative approaches?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I acknowledge the immense contribution the member for Hughes is already making in this place. I also acknowledge his predecessor in the public gallery, as I'm sure he would like me to do. We've got some good news in the economy today, Mr Speaker. Our economy grew 0.8% in the quarter and 2.6% through the year. This means that growth in our economy is now stronger and broader, and it's very welcome. This is faster growth than every major advanced economy. It means per capita growth is now the strongest in more than 3 years. It's the strongest GDP growth in almost 3 years, but it's the composition of that growth which is especially encouraging, because there's more growth in business investment, there's more growth in dwelling investment, there's growth in market sector productivity and also consumption, even though consumption came in a bit weaker than we expected. Now, these are encouraging numbers which provide a really robust foundation to confront the intense global economic volatility which has been dialled up by escalation of the conflict in Iran and the Middle East more broadly. We have very serious challenges in our economy, but these numbers show that we have very substantial advantages as well. We are very well placed to deal with what's coming at us from around the world. Now, what these numbers show is that 2025 is all about the big recovery in the private sector in particular. Private demand grew faster and contributed over 3 times more to economic growth than public demand in annual terms. Now, within a year, annual private demand growth more than tripled, but annual public demand growth more than halved compared with 2024.
Order. Members on my left, until the House is silent, I'm not going to call anyone.
How can it be?
You're interjecting on the government. You're also interjecting on your own people. Honestly, the Treasurer was asked a question. He's giving information to the House. I fail to see how this could possibly be a point on relevance, but the manager is getting a fairly good go this week. He's new in the role, so I'll order. Well, I'm fair with everyone. The manager of the opposition business.
Thanks, Speaker. It goes to direct relevance. The question was on price gouging, and you've got the wrong one. You've got it on. You're doing national accounts.
Resume your seat. As I said, I have been generous with the manager, but after that point of order, that tap's now being turned off. You can't get up and make smart aleck remarks every time you take a point of order. Otherwise, I have a long list of times where speakers, including managers, have not taken the points of order. So I have the ability not to take points of order. Do not put me in that position. Treasurer will continue.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And the reason that I have spoken about the global conditions and the domestic political economic conditions is because I acknowledge, Mr Speaker, as everyone should, that our challenges in our economy are dialled up by what we're seeing happening overseas. Now, a lot of these challenges existed before. Our inflation challenge, our productivity challenge, global economic uncertainty. But developments in Iran and the Middle East more broadly are having an impact.
Members on my left.
And that's why, Mr Speaker, we've been monitoring developments very closely in the Middle East. It's why I wrote to the ACCC to make sure that the service stations are not engaging in price gouging, that they're not taking Australian motorists and Australian consumers for mugs, Mr Speaker. Now, not everyone supports our efforts to prevent price gouging. The new Shadow Treasurer said this morning he was criticising our efforts to make sure that motorists aren't taken for mugs, and at the same time he was once again horrendously wrong, his second big gaffe in the space of 2 weeks, Mr Speaker, when he said that the petrol excise is attached to the price of petrol and not to volume. Wrong once again. We're taking steps. The economy is in good shape, Mr Speaker, and we know there's more work to do.
Call to the member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, under Labor, Australia is the only advanced economy where living standards have gone backwards. Today's national accounts show the government's share of the economy growing twice as fast as the private sector, which economists and business leaders say is fuelling inflation. After 4 years of Australians going backwards under Labor, when will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the honourable member for his question. He asks me about living standards and he asks me about public spending in the economy, Mr Speaker, and these are two very important developments in today's national accounts that I want to bring his attention to and I want to bring the House's attention to, Mr Speaker. Now, given it's Wednesday and that appears to be Economy Day and they're asking us about the economy at last, Mr Speaker, you would think that having taken 3 days, a 3-day run-up to ask a question about the economy, that they would have some understanding of what's happening with living standards, Mr Speaker. Now, I refer those opposite. Listen up. I refer those opposite
Order.
to the living standards measure in today's national accounts. In today's national accounts shows that the living standards measure, real disposable incomes per capita, rose 0.6% in the quarter. And this means that living standards have gone up 2% through the year, Mr Speaker. Now remember, when we came to office, the quarter we came to office, living standards were falling 1.5%. This quarter they've gone up 0.6% and 2% through the year. Now they asked the Prime Minister before for some international comparisons on living standards, Mr Speaker, and I want to make this clear. Growth in annual per capita incomes more than twice the average of major advanced economies, according to the OECD. According to the OECD, Mr Speaker. Now, I'm also asked about public spending and private spending. If they knew anything about the economy that they would know, private demand grew faster and contributed over 3 times more to economic growth than public demand in annual terms. Within a year, annual private demand growth more than tripled, but annual public demand growth more than halved compared with 2024. Now, the thing that is especially relevant to their criticisms of public spending, Mr Speaker, is if you look at the public demand growth in the quarter that was released today, a key driver of that spending growth is defence spending, which they've called for more of, Mr Speaker. So the key driver of public demand that they're criticising, they've called for more of, Mr Speaker, and that just goes to the absolutely torpedoing of their economic credibility that began with the member for Hume and continues today with the member for Goldstein, Mr Speaker. Living standards went up in today's data. They really should know that.
Order. And the House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. Following the anti-Semitic attacks directed by the Iranian regime in Australia in 2024, what steps have been taken by the government to keep Australians safe?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. Australia stands with the brave people of Iran in their struggle against oppression. For decades, the Iranian regime has been a destabilising force, including through its brutal acts of political violence and intimidation and its use of proxies and cutouts to engage in acts of terror in foreign countries. I remind the House that the Iranian regime directed at least 2 anti-Semitic attacks on Australian soil in 2024. These attacks were intended to drive fear in the Australian Jewish community, to undermine our security and tear at our social cohesion. These were attacks on all Australians, and the government responded decisively. Following advice from the relevant agencies, the Albanese government moved quickly to introduce and pass the Criminal Code Amendment State Sponsors of Terrorism Bill 2025 to enable the listing of a foreign state entity as a state sponsor of terrorism for the very first time. The listing of a foreign state entity enlivens a range of criminal offences, including for providing funding to, recruiting to, or being a member of a listed entity. They provide both a strong deterrent and appropriate punishment for supporting an appalling organisation. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was listed by this government on the 28th of November 2025. And as a result, Mr Speaker, criminal offences are now in effect. I want to be clear. If evidence surfaces that any person engages in conduct that breaches the criminal code, they should expect the full force of the law. This government has full confidence in our national security and law enforcement agencies. They are the best in the world. And this government will always take advice from our agencies on how to strengthen our laws and how to implement our laws in the best ways possible. And we will always work cooperatively to ensure that appropriate penalties are available for individuals or entities who would seek to sow division or do Australians harm.
Call to the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Under Labor, Australia is the only advanced economy where living standards have gone backwards. Australia's inflation rate is higher than South Africa, the United Kingdom, the United States, India, the Netherlands, France, Canada, South Korea, Germany, Italy, Japan, Singapore and Spain. After 4 years of Australians going backwards under Labor, will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him and that Labor's policies are fuelling inflation?
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The living standards measure in today's national accounts went up. It also went up through the year. And we know from the OECD that growth in annual per capita incomes in Australia is more than twice the average of the major advanced economies. And so when we came to office, living standards were falling sharply. We've been able to recover some of that lost ground, including by having 8 of the last 9 quarters have seen real wages growth. Real wages fell 5 consecutive quarters in the lead-up to the 2022 election. If those opposite really cared about living standards, they wouldn't have appointed a guy as Shadow Treasurer who wants to privatise Medicare or end work from home or dismantle superannuation or end the dual mandate so that there's higher interest rates and higher unemployment.
The Treasurer will pause. The Manager on a point of order.
Yes, Speaker, could I just ask the Treasurer to use correct titles, please? It's not too hard.
The Treasurer referred to the Shadow Treasurer as the Shadow Treasurer. All right, well, okay, we're going to draw a line in this. This is getting ridiculous. We had the argument where people were being called their electorate names. You know, we're just, and it works both ways, because that term was used by the Shadow Treasurer. So we're just going to ensure correct titles are being used, but just have some common sense about this, everyone, please. The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So living standards measure up in today's national accounts, and one of the appropriate measures has Australia per capita incomes more than twice the average of the major advanced economies, according to the OECD. That's the first point. The second point goes to international comparisons. And what today's national accounts showed is that our economy is growing stronger than every major advanced economy, Mr Speaker. Every major advanced economy has weaker economic growth than Australia does. And I know that makes the Shadow Treasurer unhappy. I know that he would prefer if we had weak growth in this country, but Australia has strong and broad and private sector-led growth, and most objective observers would consider that a good thing, even if those opposite do not, Mr Speaker. If he wants to make the international comparisons, make all of them. Stronger growth than the major advanced economies, lower debt than the major advanced economies, stronger job growth than the major advanced economy, lower unemployment than most of them as well, Mr Speaker. These are the international comparisons which the Shadow Treasurer refuses to talk about. Now, Mr Speaker, there's got to be a reason why the Shadow Treasurer is always talking the Australian economy down. There has to be a reason for that. And for those who are trying to understand why he's always talking the economy down, I refer the Shadow Treasurer and the House to a story in The Guardian, and I think also a story in the Australian Financial Review. And what this story says is that the Shadow Treasurer has shares which make more money for him when the Australian market underperforms. He has invested in shares which ensure the worse the Australian market and economy performs, the more money he makes out of it, Mr Speaker. That's the facts.
The Treasurer concluded his answer. As order. No, that is completely, utterly unacceptable to just rise in your place and start yelling at someone. Order. There are forms of... Member for Goldstein can use the forms of the House if he claims to be misrepresented in an orderly way. Order. We're not going to go anywhere until the House comes to order. This continual sniping and yelling is completely undignified for this House of Representatives. It is getting out of hand. Everyone is going to follow the standing orders and show a little more respect. The Treasurer will conclude. He's got 12 seconds to his answer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The story says the Liberal MP's updated register of interest shows he's invested in a leveraged product that makes money when Australia's benchmark ASX 200 falls, Mr Speaker. He should stop talking the Australian economy down. If he's going to make international comparisons, make all of them.
Call to the member for Petrie.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting women facing homelessness and providing access to safe and secure housing? What risk are there to accessing homes?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Speaker, I thank the member for Petrie for his question. For her question. We had an absolutely incredible visit to her community last week, where we sat down with 3 Australian women whose lives have been changed forever by our government's investments in giving them safe and affordable housing, Speaker. It was an extraordinary conversation, Speaker, and I can promise you that there will be many more such women to come. Speaker, we've got a housing challenge affecting our country that falls unfairly on Australian women. Australian women are less likely to own their own home. They are much more likely to be in need of crisis and social housing, and we are striving to meet that need. Now, Speaker, our government is delivering a record $1.2 billion of investment in crisis housing. Most of this housing is going to be utilised by women and children who are fleeing family violence. And, Speaker, that $1.2 billion, that is 20 times the amount that those opposites spent in their entire 9 years when they were sitting on the Treasury benches. Speaker, we've invested in a 50% increase in Commonwealth rent assistance. That's supporting 350,000 Australian households that are headed by older women. And, Speaker, of course, we're building 55,000 social and affordable homes and expanding pathways to home ownership. Now, Speaker, last week I received an incredible email from a single mum from Brisbane who had just received the keys for her first home that were bought through our Help to Buy program. She said, Speaker, it's hard to put into words what that moment meant to me and my little family. As a single mum who started out 4 years ago, this represents stability, security and the chance to build a future from a place that is truly ours. Speaker, our Labor government is so proud to have supported this family into their own home. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about risk for women in housing, and the truth is, Speaker, that I am looking straight at them. If the chaotic coalition had won the last election, not only would they have scrapped most of our home building programs, but they would have scrapped our home ownership programs too. And if they had their way, that single mum who we have helped into her own home would still be renting. But the absolute truth of the matter is that those opposites, Speaker, have absolutely no idea of the experiences of what is going on for Australian women.
The member for Grey.
Speaker, they'd have no idea about what's going on for Australian women because just look at what sits on the front bench over here, Speaker. 15 people who are leading this party in the lower house, 2 of them, Speaker, are Australian women. This is like a blast from the past, Speaker. It looks less like a shadow cabinet and more like a historical reenactment. Speaker, in modern-day Australia, this is a national embarrassment, and I invite you to look behind me where a diverse, unified group of people is standing up, representing our country properly and delivering for Australian women.
Give the call to the member for Moncrieff.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Under Labor, Australia is the only advanced economy where living standards have gone backwards. Today's national accounts show that Australia's population has increased by 1.9 million since Labor came to office, putting pressure on housing, on services and inflation. After 4 years of Australians going backwards under Labor, when will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him and that migration is out of control?
Order. Order. When the House comes to order, the Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for her question. Living standards today went up. There's figures today.
In today's national accounts.
The national accounts figures today have gone up. Today the figures show. Today the figures show the fastest economic growth of any major advanced economy. And what we're really seeing here is the projection that clearly yesterday they briefed the Australian that they were going to talk about the economy today. Clearly they wrote the questions yesterday before they saw the facts of the accounts. Now, Australia has, I remind the House, I'm asked about international comparisons, faster economic growth than Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the US. That is the entire G7. Faster economic growth. The UK and Germany recently experiencing recessions, along with whole lots of the advanced economic world, including our neighbours in New Zealand. A lower unemployment rate than Canada, France, Italy, the UK and the United States. They think that somehow doesn't matter. But for us, we on this side think it does matter when people have jobs. And that's why we're proud that 1.2 million jobs have been created on our watch. Stronger employment growth than Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the United States. And at the same time, a higher participation rate than Canada, France.
Order. The Prime Minister will pause. Order. The manager on a point of order.
It's a point of order, Mr. Speaker. Relevance.
Sorry, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party.
Today's national accounts. The question goes to immigration, population growth.
Resume your seat. Yeah, OK, resume your seat. Yeah, the Prime Minister is being directly relevant. He's talking about the national accounts. Yes, he was asked one specific of that, but he's obviously being directly relevant. He's talking about the figures that he was asked about by the member for Moncrieff, and then the political question at the end, as I indicated to the House before, completely opens this question up, which is different from the questions yesterday, but this one is broader in its context, so I get it. So the Prime Minister is going to be broader in his answer. Order. The Prime Minister can continue, and he's going to be heard in silence. This is beyond a joke, the way the childish, snide remarks are being added in. It's not dignified. So I don't know how else to explain it. I can only imagine what the gallery thinks. Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. He hadn't been on the TV for 5 or 10 minutes, Mr. Speaker. So they have to parade up. They have to parade up.
Order.
And then when there are 20 seconds to go, he'll get up. That's what happens, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
That's the game that is going on here. They're not interested in the economy. They're not interested in jobs. They're not interested in growth. They're not interested in living standards. All they're interested in is parading themselves over who is next to jump into various positions.
Give the call to the honourable member for Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government making it easier for Australians to see a bulk billing GP after a decade of cuts and neglect? How do Australians find information about seeing a GP for free? And what information has been provided about alternative policies?
Give the call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker, and to the member for Maribyrnong. As a qualified psychologist, she understands better than most the importance of a stronger Medicare, and together we've been able to visit bulk billing practices in her electorate at Gladstone Park and Moonee Ponds, and she knows that in Victoria, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report that the bulk billing rate for pensioners and concession card holders is now 93.5%. And in the last 3 months alone, for those Victorians who don't have a concession card, their bulk billing rate has climbed by more than 9%, Mr. Speaker, in just 3 months. Now, Australians can now visit the website health.gov.au/bulk billing to find a fully bulk billing practice near them, Mr. Speaker. They just have to plug in their suburb or their postcode, and a local list will appear from among the 3,500 general practices that are now 100% bulk billing, with that list growing every single week, Mr. Speaker. But I regret to say to the member and to the House that finding out about alternative health policies is a little harder, Mr. Speaker, especially from the new Leader of the Opposition. Now, the Prime Minister helpfully tabled the Liberal Party election review yesterday, but I can confirm that there is not a single mention of the word health or Medicare in that entire review, so there's not a clue there. So instead, Mr. Speaker, I googled Angus Taylor health plan and was directed to the Leader of the Opposition's website, actually, Mr. Speaker. But I then discovered that all of the historic material mysteriously has been wiped from that website. The most common result you get from the Leader of the Opposition's website now is page not found, Mr. Speaker. But I didn't give up, Mr. Speaker. I was directed to a machine called the Wayback Machine, which I thought was the Liberal Party policy unit, but in fact is a tool that very usefully has preserved all of the Leader of the Opposition's greatest hits. His support for the GP tax from Peter Dutton, cheering Susan Lee's Medicare freeze, arguing that a higher GST is, quote, good policy, not sure whether that's still his view, and so much more, Mr. Speaker. But I can also report to the House that that's not the only online tool that's preserved these greatest hits. The member for Mitchell's social media account, always willing to lend a hand, is also keeping the historical record alive. So if you can't find your way to the Wayback Machine, Mr Speaker, just log on to Alex Hawke MP. He's more than happy to make sure that everyone remembers what the Leader of the Opposition really thinks, even if he's trying to rewrite history.
Before I call the member for Mayo, I have a couple of further acknowledgements. Councillor Sophie Tan, the Mayor of the City of Greater Dandenong, Councillor Paige Kennett, Councillor Stephen Cooman, Councillor Brett Oman, and I see the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Councillor Nick Rees, here. Welcome to question time. Give the call to the honourable member for Mayo.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In Coles, Pink Lady apples are $8.90 a kilo. No surprise, Woolworths advertise the same apples for the same price. Australian families are struggling to afford basic groceries. 1 in 3 kids regularly have no school lunch due to in part to supermarket duopoly, price fixing and price gouging. Will the government urgently consider bringing forward the timeline for supermarkets to comply with the ban on excessive pricing of groceries that's not due to come into effect until the 1st of July?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the honourable member for her question. As we've acknowledged in other answers, we know that Australians are under financial pressure, and a lot of that pressure does come at the checkout, and that's what's motivated a lot of our efforts when it comes to our competition policy suite. I acknowledge Assistant Minister Lee and Minister Molino for the work that we do together to try and make sure that our supermarket sector is as competitive as it can be, and also that we have the price transparency that we need, and that we're cracking down on price gouging wherever it pops up, Mr Speaker. And so I acknowledge the honourable member's interest in all of that work. I know that her question is about bringing forward the start date of some of those really important measures. The reality is, Mr Speaker, that we go as quickly as we can, but also consulting where we need to, making sure that we get it right. But at every turn, what we're trying to do is to strengthen the arrangements as soon as we can, because we know that supermarket transparency, we know that supermarket competition is potentially a big part of this challenge, and that's why it's a big focus of the government.
Call to the honourable member for Tangney.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to make university more accessible and more affordable? What are the risks? Thank you.
The call to the Minister for Education.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my friend, the multi-talented member for Tangney, for his question. Mr Speaker, more Aussies will start a university degree this year than ever before. And this year, more Australians will also do a free university bridging course than ever before. These are these courses that get you ready to do a uni degree. I know my old mate, the member for Herbert, loves a story. You do. Well, here's one for him. This is the story of Jennifer Baker. She became a mum at the age of 19. For much of the next 10 years, she worked in hospitality. And then one day she saw an ad for one of these free bridging courses. Now she's got a science degree and an honours degree in chemistry and a PhD in medicinal chemistry and a Fulbright scholarship. Now she designs new drugs to stop cancers from growing. That's what these courses do. That's what they can lead to.
Order.
You know, what this tells us is talent is everywhere. It's opportunity that's not, and it's education that can change that. Now, Mr Speaker, I'm asked about affordability for university, and as you know, we've cut student debt by 20%. And I'm very glad to see that it got more than a few mentions in that secret Liberal Party evaluation of the election. It also, I'm glad to see, got a few references in the Young Liberals' submission to that review, including this on the cost of tertiary education from Barara Young Liberals, quote, "I'm not surprised young people did not vote for us, as frankly there was nothing on offer."
Really? The Young Liberals?
Not much has changed. Mr Speaker, I'm very happy to table the submission from the Young Liberals. Mr Speaker, we've cut student debt by 20%. Now we want to take the next step to help to make getting a university degree quicker and cheaper. And I've spoken in this place before about what some universities are doing, where they'll take a year off your degree if you've got a TAFE qualification in the same area. Effectively, if you've done a fee-free TAFE course, it'll mean the first year of uni is free. And I want to see more of that, and that's why I've asked the Australian Tertiary Education Commission to develop a national credit recognition framework this year. And as part of that, they'll be able to allocate more funded places to universities that are prepared to do this, that cut the length of their degrees if you already have a TAFE qualification in the same area, to make going to university quicker and cheaper. This is the sort of common-sense things that we need to do to make it easier to get the skills that you need and that Australia needs.
Call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Prime Minister, on Labor's watch, Australians have endured the longest household recession on record. Prices are up sharply, real wages are down, Australians are working harder for less. And government is getting bigger, but lives aren't getting better. The only things increasing are inflation, interest rates and population by 1.9 million. After 4 years of Australians going backward under Labor, when will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Another tight question from the opposition there, Mr Speaker. And he invites me to be able to say that today's figures show, and I'm asked what is growing, today's figures show the Australian economy is growing strongly, stronger than any other advanced economy. Simple as that. Just like the other thing that's been growing, Mr Speaker,
Order. Members on my left.
It's our jobs. 1.2 million of them. The last figures showed that there were an additional 50,000 full-time jobs created on our watch. We think that
Order. The Treasurer will cease objection.
is good. What else is growing? The number of people who have benefited from free TAFE. 725,000 and counting. What else is growing? The people who are benefiting from the 5% deposit to get their first home. 225,000 and counting. What else is growing? The number of Australians who are benefiting from cheaper batteries. 250,000 and counting. That is all growing. I'll tell you the other thing that is decreasing, and that's the gender pay gap. Yesterday's figures show a record low gender pay gap, the lowest it has ever been, something that we are very proud of, So, Mr Speaker, they come in here with Monday's pack that they forgot to ask, ignoring today's figures on the national accounts that are out today, completely ignoring the growth that is there, and they come in here and just continue to just talk Australia down.
Order.
And they interject louder the more desperate they get, the more lack of an agenda they have. Mr Speaker, yesterday I helped them out so their backbench and their front bench, including the Shadow Treasurer, could read their election review. I suggest they go back and read it because they've learnt absolutely nothing.
Call to the honourable member for Barton.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for Australian workers, and what are the risks?
Call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Barton for her question and her commitment to working Australians right across this country. Of course, the Albanese Labor government is focused on creating more jobs and getting wages moving for working people. Our government has achieved the lowest average unemployment rate of any government in 50 years, and more than 1.2 million jobs have been created since our government was elected. At the same time we are creating jobs, we are making sure that these jobs are well paid and secure. Now, to support our lowest-paid workers, our Labor government made a submission to the Fair Work Commission each and every year since we've been in government, advocating for a wage increase. Now, of course, under this Labor government, the minimum wage earners are on an average $9,000 a year better off. Now, of course, we sought to reinvigorate enterprise bargaining, which is now delivering results. Workers covered by enterprise agreements are enjoying the strongest wages growth in the nation, rising by 9.6% on average over just the last 2 years. Now, Speaker, I'm also asked about the biggest risks to Australian workers. Well, it's no surprise that the biggest risk to Australian workers is right over on the other side. The new Liberal leadership team features the Shadow Treasurer, who made clear his deep disregard for jobs for Australians when he argued for the removal of the RBA's dual mandate. Of course, the new Leader of the Opposition has a long history of opposing every single one of our measures to create secure jobs and better pay for working Australians. He has regularly championed individual agreements that we know makes the gender pay gap worse compared to enterprise agreements.
Order.
And, of course, his handpicked Senator Hume, the new Shadow Minister for Employment, should otherwise be known as the Shadow Minister for Unemployment, because, of course, the first thing she was going to do was sack 41,000 people in this country. And, of course, Senator Hume also has railed against wage increases for workers, claiming to Sky News in 2024 that a wage increase for minimum award wage earners would be, and I quote, the worst thing for Australians. They may have changed their leadership team, but they haven't changed their spots. These Liberals are never good for working Australians.
The call to the member for Wentworth.
My question is to the Treasurer. AI is already having a significant impact on the country and is rapidly evolving. My community is concerned that the government doesn't have enough urgency in addressing AI, particularly because it took 3 years to develop an AI strategy. How are you thinking about the impact of AI on the economy, and how will the budget urgently address both capturing the upside opportunities and managing the downside risks?
Give a call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank you to the member for Wentworth for her question and also for participating in the government's reform roundtable towards the end of last year, where artificial intelligence was a big focus of the discussions, because we know how important that is to the future of our economy. Of course, I would contest the inference in her question to how long it's taken the government to get our thinking together on this. We've been working on some of these really important questions and making, I think, some substantial progress. The honourable member knows, as every member on this side of the House knows, that AI is a transformational technology, and we want to make sure that Australians are the biggest beneficiaries of this change rather than victims of this change. We brought forward the release of Australia's National AI Plan in response to the urgency of some of the most contentious and most important policy issues. Here I wanted to acknowledge the really important work in our team by the member for Parramatta, who brings an extraordinary amount of intellectual horsepower to these questions, and also Senator Tim Ayres, Minister Tim Ayres in the other place, the Minister for Industry. Member for Parramatta works very closely with Minister Ayres on these key questions, and together they released our AI plan on the 2nd of December last year. And it was a comprehensive roadmap to build an AI-enabled economy that harnesses the full potential of artificial intelligence for the benefit of all Australians. And the National AI Plan that our colleagues released on behalf of the government really has three goals. Firstly, capturing the opportunities of AI, including attracting more investment. Secondly, spreading the benefits of AI, whether it's in public services, building skills or in public organisations. And then thirdly, keeping Australians safe, the important work that we need to do together to make sure that the...
Order. The member for Wentworth on a point of order.
My question specifically went to the budget and in relation to AI.
Yes, but your question contained about community concerns. It took years to develop a strategy. What is the government's approach to AI, and then developing a response regarding the budget? So the Treasurer is being directly relevant in terms of what the government is doing to the question he was asked. I appreciate there was an end part of the question, but under the standing orders, the Treasurer is entitled to answer the question, and he is being directly relevant.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And this plan's about capturing these economic opportunities. Now, when it comes to the budget, we've got three pieces of investment already rolling out. $29.9 million for the Safety Institute, $1 billion through the National Reconstruction Fund, and $166 million for government AI. And here I acknowledge the work of Minister Gallagher working with the other colleagues. And when it comes to the upcoming budget, we've made it really clear. A big focus of the upcoming budget, in addition to inflation, in addition to global uncertainty, will be this productivity challenge that the honourable member knows has been hanging around in our economy for some decades. AI can be part of the solution to our productivity challenge if we manage it right and maximise the opportunities along the lines of the AI plan. And so AI, productivity more broadly, are a really important part of the deliberations and discussions that we've been having on this side of the House as we lead up to the government's fifth budget in May.
Give a call to the honourable member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government working to reduce family, domestic and sexual violence and supporting workers on the front line?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Corangamite for her very important question. I know that she is absolutely committed, as all of us are, to making sure we end family, domestic and sexual violence in this country. Frontline workers are literally saving lives every single day across this country. They're helping with safety planning, they're counselling children who've been impacted by family and domestic violence, they're helping women plan to leave safely, they're helping them access finances and some of the thousands of new homes that the Minister for Housing was talking about earlier. They're helping perpetrators of violence change their behaviour. They are doing literally life-saving work every single day. And I'm so proud of our policy to put 500 extra frontline workers right across Australia. And today I was delighted to visit the YWCA here in Canberra and meet with YWCA staff and Canberra Rape Crisis staff. Both of those organisations have benefited from these extra workers, frontline workers that we are funding. And I was delighted to announce today an extra $291.7 million to expand this program by 70%. We'll continue funding to 2030 and make more of these workers available right around Australia every day. This means that since coming to government, we have invested almost $500 million in this one program alone. This is one program that's part of our over $4 billion investment in family, domestic and sexual violence since coming to government. It's about frontline services, it's about prevention, it's about perpetrator behaviour change, programs for children, making the leaving violence payment permanent, just one example, so victims have the financial support to leave safely. We've passed legislation to make sure our social security system can't be weaponised against victims of violence. We've launched Our Ways, Strong Ways, Our Voices, the nation's first standalone First Nations plan to end family, domestic and sexual violence, with $218 million more funding. We've funded programs that intervene earlier with men who want to change their behaviour, stop using violence. We've invested more than $1.2 billion, as the Housing Minister said, in emergency and transitional housing, $3.9 billion in legal services, including $800 million specifically for family violence services, 10 days paid domestic violence leave, reformed the family law system to make it safer, worked with states and territories to improve justice responses to sexual violence, and a 40% funding boost for 1800-RESPECT. That's just a fraction of what we're doing, because no Australian should live in fear. No Australian should live with violence. We are committed to making sure that happens.
Give the call to the honourable member for Capricornia.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Under Labor, Australia is the only advanced economy where living standards have gone backwards. Today's national accounts show productivity, Australia's economic potential, has flatlined this quarter and collapsed by 4.7% since Labor came to office. After 4 years of Australians going backwards under Labor, when will the Prime Minister finally accept the buck stops with him?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you for the question. The truth is that the current account figures today show that the Australian economy is growing at the fastest rate it has in 3 years, and it's growing faster than any economy, any advanced economy in the world. That's what the facts show. They also show that per capita living standards are positive, are growing. That's what the figures show today. And they show also an improvement in productivity across the year. So the figures today, it's one.
The Leader of the Opposition will cease suggesting. The Treasurer will cease suggesting. The Leader of the Opposition. Order. The Treasurer is now warned. Honestly, I want to hear what the Prime Minister has to say. He's giving information to the House. He's been asked a question. The member for Capricornia deserves an answer as well. So the Prime Minister is going to be heard in silence.
And it's because, Mr Speaker, we have put in place the measures that we took to the Australian people last May. And we've been ticking them off one by one as we implement them to make a difference to people's cost of living issues. We know that people have been under pressure. That is why we have put these measures in place. But all those measures were opposed by those opposite. Just 2 days before the election, of course, the two economic shadow ministers put forward their costings they submitted. Now, their costings would have cut 3-day guarantee, removing affordable childcare for 100,000 families, cut 41,000 frontline workers, cut student debt relief, cut free TAFE, cut the Commonwealth track payment, cut cheaper home batteries, cut 5% deposits for first home buyers, cut Help to Buy, cut Build to Rent. They would have cut the National Reconstruction Fund. He hasn't been on TV for a minute.
Order. The manager on his point of the manager. Order. The member for Groom. We're going to hear this point of order. The manager will state the point of order.
Relevance, direct relevance. The question was about today's national accounts and productivity. Which is for
the Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, in every point of order that the Manager of Opposition Business has taken today, he has referred to a tiny part of a much longer question. In every single instance, the tag that is being used on almost every question opens the relevance rule right up. Now, the Manager of Opposition Business knows this. The points of order, he's been around long enough to know that every one of them is not valid, and it's simply being used as a way to disrupt the House.
Order. The Leader of the House is correct. I'm almost at my end of my tolerance of accepting points of order. If you're going to have a broad political question, I made this point earlier today. Questions earlier in the week have been tighter and specific, and we've been dealing with those. But these broad questions about when the buck stops with someone. Come on. There's going to be really broad answers with that. And you're just having a go if you try and disrupt this now. So if you want tight answers and you want to take points of order, that's fine, but don't ask very broad questions because you're going to get a really broad answer. I'll keep saying it and hopefully it'll get through. Prime Minister has the call.
Speaker, because what I'm comparing is the growth that we've seen in today's national accounts with what would have happened had we not been elected. So, yes, I accept responsibility to go directly to the question for what we have put in place. But if 2 days beforehand the then Shadow Treasurer and Shadow Finance Minister's plan, that most Australians, it was hidden, of course, a bit like they tried to hide their election review, had have known that all these cuts were there, including cutting production tax credits for the resources sector, cutting the Housing Australia Future Fund. What is remarkable, of course, we all know they wanted to cut the income tax cuts that we put in place. But what is absolutely extraordinary is that the then shadow economic ministers, the now leader and deputy leader of the opposition, managed to do all that. And here's the kicker, with bigger deficits over 2 years. Bigger deficits over 2 years and more debt.
Order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Boothby.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Environment and Water. How is the Albanese Labor government tracking on delivery of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan? And how does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Leader of the House and the Minister representing the Minister for Environment and Water.
Thanks very much, Speaker, and I thank the member for Boothby and acknowledge the strong commitment the member for Boothby has to the health of the River Murray, and acknowledge that on this side of the House, the commitment to everyone on this side and a little bit over as well, to the health of the full Murray-Darling Basin, a system that had been over-allocated to death. This government, the Albanese Labor government, is committed to delivering the Murray-Darling Basin Plan and delivering it in full. The pathway to deliver the Murray-Darling Basin Plan is to make sure that there is water preserved for the environment. The overall plan as at the end of 2025, there's 2 areas at the moment where water had to be acquired. The first is with respect to what's called the Bridging the Gap target, and the government has now acquired 99% of the water for the Bridging the Gap target. The additional environmental water, the additional 450 gigalitres, which those opposite, when we came to office, had of the 450, had acquired 24 gigalitres, 24 of the 450. We have now recovered 225 gigalitres for that 450 target and have a plan to recover—
Order. The Minister's going to pause. The member for Barker and the Leader of the Nationals. I want to hear the answer. Can you help me with that? Because you are being completely disruptive. The Leader of the House will continue.
Thanks, Speaker. And a plan announced by the Minister for the Environment to now recover more than 400 of the 450 gigalitre target by the end of this year. To do that, at the end of last year, the Minister for the Environment announced an expression of interest process to make sure that in acquiring water, we also did so in a way that delivered value for money in acquiring the water. This has not always been the way that water is acquired under the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. When those opposite were in office, there was water from the Northern Basin that was acquired, an allocation for which the government of the day spent $80 million on the allocation. At the time, $80 million on the entitlement. At the time that entitlement, guess how much water it had allocated to it? Zero. $80 million they spent for it. And if anyone's wondering whether it was value for money, it was value for money for someone, because the company that it was bought from booked a $52 million profit. Now, the history of that company is interesting. It was formed with the original director being the Leader of the Opposition. And the government of the day paid Versace prices for water from the reject shop. Only the Leader of the Opposition can explain how on earth that was in the public interest.
I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.